You know what I mean? Like when you're describing why something isn't working, there's no default. You don't stop. You just describe why that thing doesn't work. We get our default by solving so many problems and ending up looking back and saying, oh, I solved 80% of these problems the same way. Very nice. That's my default. But that's confusing because, it does default almost allows people to say, hey, when you don't know what to do, just do this. And it's like, no, when you don't know what to do, figure out what to do.
Yeah,
Don't
I
go
think
default.
yeah.
I mean, that's my
I'll look
point.
at that because I think that's getting into
Yeah, it
deeper
is.
concepts. That's getting into way deeper concepts. We
It's
got to have
deep.
it. We have to have a technique. Even if you're going to be subjective as a judge, you need a technique to look and go, what are you dancing? And that is a default. Maybe it's a bad choice of words for it, but you need something that identifies the dance. Otherwise, am I watching you dance American rhythm or am I watching you dance American Latin rhythm? I'm sorry, international Latin. There has to be that.
The
Coming out of that,
specifics. There has to be a rule book saying how they are different.
Exactly. Now you've got top coaches right now. They're saying like, well, this is why. I'm going to be in a flex knee here because of the speed. But everywhere else in cha-cha, your leg is straight. In rumba, there's no reason for it to be bent.
But they chose the straight leg in Latin. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. They chose the straight leg in Latin originally, not because like we want straight legs, but because it was the most functional thing for what they wanted to do. So the same process has to occur in rhythm. We can't just say, hey, it's a bent knee. We have to say, like we did in Latin, hey, we want this to be flirty. We want this to be loving. We want this to be a party. And then really, if you really want to manipulate the technique of it, change the timing. Like that's what's going to, because there's only one efficient way to move the body, always. So you really want to manipulate the make them different from one another, you change the timing. And I do think cha-cha should be slower in American rhythm, even more slower. Not like, I know it's already slower. I think cha-cha should be slower in American rhythm than it is. Yeah. And I think that rumba is actually pretty good. Rumba's pretty good.
But
from what I would probably slow down.
From what I understand, what my knowledge was, that the knee is flexed because American rhythm is supposed to look earthy. It's supposed to look more into the floor.
But this is what I've heard.
This is what I heard. Okay. Yeah. Even how you stand, and I can't remember how he said it, but even how we stand in Latin is not taller, but the pelvic, we're taller here versus rhythm is more how you flex it down. It's going more into the floor. So it was to create two different looks. So there is more differences, but even then, no one talks about that at the beginning.
Yeah. They left that part out, huh?
They left that part out. So, yeah. I mean, I get.
Well, and I'm curious. Did that person? You don't have to give name, but did that person say that you would stand like not moving at all, literally just standing there? That you would stand?
No. You still had action all over the place, but it was even how high it had to do with how high I was holding my pelvis up versus like, which gave me a higher carriage.
So then, so like just standing still, the rhythm he would stand different dancing rhythm than he would Latin.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. See that I would probably not like that person's teasing. Like there's only one really efficient way to stand up tall well. I mean, I don't see there being an alternative to standing up straight. It's the same way in standard as it is in Latin. Now, maybe then as we went into more specifics, I would understand more of what
right. I'm giving you this idea.
Right, yeah.
And just having watched and having danced it too, I never danced rhythm professionally. I danced all the other three styles, but I didn't dance that one professionally. But
you studied it.
I studied it. But looking at both styles, I can see the difference in the carriages. I can see the difference in how the one goes into the floor and one's kind of, we still use our hips, but we're not going into the floor like that. So it's not as earthy to me.
See, I would probably not like that stuff. If that helps you understand me, like I'm probably new school. I'm probably more on the side of it should look more like Latin than it should. Like if that's, right. I'm thinking that's probably where I'd end up on your spectrum. I mean, I dance.
It's gonna look different because that leg has to be straight when you go onto it. Not when I get there, when I go onto it, it has to be straight. So there's going to be a visual difference of how I get from foot to foot and how it's going to look. There's got to be, because if I'm laying on a flex knee, totally different, you know. So it's going to look visually different, and I see that difference in how they hold themselves. Sure. I mean, even at the top of the game.
And even in that situation, like if they are just the exact specifics you were talking about, like the bent knee landing and then a straight leg landing and the visual effects it will absolutely have. I mean, you can blend these effects like as much as you want and try to make them look the same, but they will absolutely have some kind of change in effect. Like for example, in that scenario, if you're supposed to be walking to a bent knee, so you walk to a bent knee. One thing that's going to happen automatically as a result of walking to the bent knee is your hip bone at the speed that you're doing it is that your hip bone is going to stay tilted backwards. Like it is going to happen no matter what. At the speeds you're moving, when you place your foot to a bent knee, your hip bone is going to stay backwards. And as a result of that, you can then feel the process of swinging it forward much easier. But I could still rush, if I'm in control, I could still rush that process of straightening my leg as soon as it hits the ground and make it look as similar and possibly to some the exact same. They wouldn't be able to notice the difference just on how fast I straighten my leg after it landed to bent knee, as if someone then walked to the straight leg. Did that make sense?
No, you're not saying anything that's off there. I mean, actually, I would have to look it up, but it's actually Sam Sedano did a lecture. This was a long time ago. He did a lecture with, I forgot who it was, but he said, he demonstrated he was going to dance rhythm and the other guy was going to dance with a straight leg. They danced together. Now, how can that happen? It was exactly like you said. His knee was not flexed very long. Sam's was not flexed very long. It wasn't this, right. I'm in a position. It was flexed because he landed on it, then it shifted. It wasn't just like, I'm there for a long time and look at it. It flexed and gone. So how do you have an international dance person? They were in a hole. How do you have an international person dancing with an American person? And I think that's where it's kind of like, if anybody was to make a standard, I think Sam's been in it long enough to kind of go, this is what works, you know? So I would say if there's anybody, my initial point was that I don't, it wasn't about the hip lift technique. It was more about like, you know, why is there such a disagreement on why people don't, you know, they don't want to embrace it and then just take that concept and say, okay, we have a standard now. Let's now put this into our judging, but it just keeps changing and there's more arguments about it. So it's, to me, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I mean by, maybe not, and maybe I was being harsh by saying there's no identity. Maybe I should just mean, can you stick to it? Can you just standardize it and stick to it? And because
I don't really feel like it has an identity issue, but I get what you mean when you say people argue about what's supposed to be done all the time, which I see how those two statements can be contradicted. But the only reason I say it doesn't have an identity issue is because I don't think Latin has a clear enough identity either. It's a matter of how clear, like to me, if it had maybe it's got an idea, but it certainly doesn't have an identity. It certainly doesn't fill itself up the whole way. Like there are some major holes here, but I would imagine I would feel the same with Latin. But there is definitely that group of people big time in American rhythm, also never having the experience with that group of people is Latin. And I've been told that there's the same group in Latin, but I don't have that experience where, like you said, they talk about like how it should be done differently. And some of these people are talking about dramatic differences and these people are judging. Like, I wish I could just do like a little caption video up in the video for each time I want to describe a movement, you know, but like delaying, straightening, like swinging your hip while your leg is still bent and delaying that process is taught and like encouraged. And problem is when I say that out loud, I don't think most people picture, what it is that's going on here. Swinging your hip forward while your knee is still bent. So you're here going like over a bent knee instead of a straight leg and swinging. See that swinging action you see? Like that.
See, I would need to see that because it's hard it's hard to move your hip if your knee is flexed.
This thing.
Yeah, but your knee's moving. Your knee is still
this
flat.
action right here, guys. This is
Okay.
the one.
That was okay. If you stuck through this long, and this is probably gonna be 3 or 4 episodes, so we've talked like for almost 2 hours. You just got the money shot there. So
like it's literally that's what it is. It's like you're just both bent knees and you're like,
okay, well, okay, because you said that a couple of times and I was confused. I'm like, you cannot move your hip over your flexed knee, and anatomically it's impossible because your knee was still flexed when you did that, though.
Like straight leg swinging,
but your knee's straightening
versus bent leg. So like straight leg swinging versus this. If the leg is bent and you're swinging your hips, that's a thrust. If the leg's straight and you're swinging your hips, that's a swing. Like, those are just.
I'm gonna still stick by my
walking
statement
around thrusting people.
I get what you're saying, but to clear up some things with folks, anatomically, you cannot swing your hip over a bent knee. You cannot do that. It's anatomically.
People do it all the time.
What you just did when you thrusted, your knee was still flexed, though. It was still flexed.
Right, that's what I'm complaining about. You can't swing your hip over a flex or bent knee.
Put it over a straight leg. It's not putting over a straight leg. It's anatomically incorrect. You just can't do it.
Well, sure you can. Yeah, I'm saying don't swing
unless you want to break your
over a bent knee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Only swing your hip over a straight leg. Don't swing it over a bent knee. That's a horrible idea.
And if you can do that, please send video because I don't think it's possible.
What do you mean? They press that line and they do that all the time. Oh man, I don't want to call out names, but you've never seen.
Don't call it names. Don't call it names. Only if you're getting like references or something like that.
This. My knees bent and I'm swinging. My knees bent and I'm swinging. My knees bent and this is bad. Knee bend, swinging, bad. Good. Thrusting, bad. Swinging, good.
Are you doing a press line?
No, I'm walking. Flat foot in the front.
Are you on the ball? Flat foot? If I couldn't see the flat foot.
I mean, you can press line it too. I could press that. But I'm flat here in this thing. Flat foot and swinging the hip and that nice thrust right there. That position is never good. You should always be straight legged when slinging that forward.
And I'm glad you did that because I want you to play this back later on because you will see that at no point was your knee flush with your hip. It's impossible. It can't.
Oh no, I'm just talking about not
because when you were actually doing like the one that was kind of bad, yeah. So yeah, don't try to do that. But yeah, if your knee is flexed, basically, I mean, it's gonna stop the hip process anyway because it's on that line. You got to remember the hips are connected on both sides. So if I'm swinging one this way, it's kind of hard to go the other way unless you kind of go a pendulum style. But it just doesn't work.
Wait, what is this you're talking about?
I'm talking about the hips, the hip joints and stuff. Like it's all tied to the pelvic girdle. So you're like. It's twisting like this. So if I'm twisting
so here, swing,
how can I swing my hip?
I consider swing and rotation two different actions.
Okay,
swinging is like lifting. What you refer to as
doing
lifting.
Like a lifting. Okay.
Swinging, that's what I refer to as swing. Rotation is completely separate.
Okay.
I teach rotation, but I teach it to prevent it from happening. Like that's I don't feel like anybody ever needs to think about rotating their hips. If you're doing everything you need to, your hips are going to rotate. You need to think about delaying rotating your hips. That's at least my experience. So yeah, so when I say swing, for those of you at home, I mean no rotation, taking your hip bone from one side to the other versus twisting. But you could see all that in our PP notes section on our website at
way to bring that home.
Yeah, it's actually really cool, man. Have you gone and checked it out?
I have. I actually saw like your first couple that came on Facebook, so I saw like a couple of them. So they are pretty good to check out. So everyone, go ahead and check it out. and you'll see, if you're lucky enough, you'll see Jonathan full-length shot doing some of that stuff. So,
I think there are some practice drills in there with me doing them, and I was like, one of them, I don't know if it made the final cut, but I was like in tights and everything because we were trying to get to see the shape of the body and whatnot. So whatever we did do, I think it's pretty visible there. And the description's nice too. There's some diagrams too. But yeah, I mean, there's endless things to be said about specificity of movement within genres of dance.
No, I think honestly that's another conversation. Because if I had to say anything about that one, identity versus, what do they identity of it versus the judging aspect of it, which to me, there should be a clearer breakdown of in bronze, this is what we're looking at. Can you be on time and have good footwork? Is that what some of them are thinking? Or is it like, well, I would also like to see some knowledge of your rib cage. Okay, well then I know something, but there's no breakdown of that.
There needs to be some specifics.
At least have this proficiency up to this point in bronze. At least they have this proficiency up to silver because they're judging judging something. Even within the styles, they're going, well, there's pre-bronze, so just don't fall over. There's like full bronze. But
there's nothing wrong with this, people. NFL, there are rules in little kids football that are not in the NFL. Like, there's nothing wrong with having rules in place that eventually will not be in place when you get at a higher level. There's nothing wrong with that concept. So just to throw that out there.
Right, but to go off of that, and this is what I was saying earlier, the rules don't change the game itself. Right. And that's what I was saying about the whole principles. We can argue about something, but still have the same principle of it. Football is still football. I can change the rules, but it's still football.
But that's all going to be opinion and whatnot. So that's a discussion that has to be had in a friendly scenario. That's not a discussion for like the physics, all the mathematicians of the group. They're not meant to be in that discussion. The people who are figuring out how to do things correctly and the most efficient way to do things, they give that information to those people in the other room who are trying to get everybody to agree on it. And then those people figure out some way to make it happen because they know that based off fact, numbers, science, it's what's best. So yeah, that's just two different processes though.
Yeah, two different processes, two different conversations. So, tell us what you think about rhythm. Do you think there's a sit identity? Do you think do you know how to, well, take the subjectivity out. When you go on the floor, do you think you're dancing proper American rhythm by what you've been told? Or is it, are you confused from time to time? So
you should say, do you think that you're trying to dance proper American? Yeah. I know any student of dance is sitting there thinking, well, I'm trying to do I'm not doing what my teacher told me to.
Yep. And if there's professionals or people that have been dancing a long time, I mean, give us a feedback on why if you don't like hip hop technique, tell us why. If it's a subject of, well, I don't like how this happens or like how this happens. So we have something.
If it's a foreground for someone to start a conversation, yeah, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and really, in hip lift technique is the only attempt at a standardized rule book and
that I will agree with. That I will agree with. So not to hammer it in.
Sorry, hip lift technique. Hard not to just call you out there, huh? But I feel like this.
They got a lot of plug out of this one.
Yeah, and not only that, but like what some people might think of this as a bad thing. Like, it's good to be the innovators. Like, it's good to be the first person who's really trying to stand up and say, who's really trying to say, we need a standardized rule book. I mean, we should applaud hip lift technique. I'm so sorry. We should applaud hip lift technique if for nothing other than continuing the pursuit of trying to identify what American rhythm is to the masses.
And to go back to what you said, that's where the conversation needs to be. If you don't like it, go talk to them and say, how do we go forward with it?
Exactly.
You were about to disagree with me.
I was gonna say go home. If you don't like it and don't want to get involved in being part of the solution, then shut up and go home.
Or add to it.
Or even better, what you said, get involved. Yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to get involved, just keep your mouth shut.
And then the question to me is, if there's enough people if the gap is so wide between factions of rhythm dancers, then why is there such a wide gap? And to me, these are theoretical questions. I'm just thinking in my head. If there's a few things, this is a theoretical question that it doesn't need to be answered. But my thought process is going, if this standard is out there, in order to further your identity, because that's been an issue for a long time, if it's only a few things, go have a conversation and just make it stronger. If the gap is wide, so wide that you don't want to get on board with this, we need to figure out why there's a big gap, because it's only hurting the identity.
Michael, you would solve all of ballroom's problems as a whole. I'm going to give my answer just because I want to. It's fun. The answer to that question is endless. Like, there are so many variables. It could be the pettiness of people, like we referenced before, like people that not wanting things to change, they're used to their way. It could be the pettiness of people as far as them having taken one lesson, believe they understood everything that was being said. They've never really understood how to truly commit to something in life. So they then go saying things about it, and whether they be good things about it or bad things about it, either one. You got people out there saying hip lift technique is awesome, and they don't know what it is. Like, that's just as bad. There's all sorts of variables that go into how did we end up here with rhythm is lost or is lacking in identity as it is, because there wasn't one when it started, and now everybody's got their mouth and their foot in the race. You know what I mean? Everyone's got an opinion, and it's just impossible to come up with I really do believe it's the human part of it, that the emotions that keep.
It's sad to say that how many times have we been in a conversation on this, and it's come back to that. How many times? And honestly, we don't need to answer that question, but it's just something. How many times has it gone back to, is it just because people want to hold on to power? I don't want to lose students, because if I say it's correct, then they're going to go over there and take it. I'm going to lose money. Is it that? Yeah. So the question stands: if there's a big enough gap.
Sorry, you skipped on me there. I lost your.
It was probably for the better. But anyway, that was a great conversation. Come on, people, let's get it together. Once again, Smooth got it together, and guess what? They got it. Well, now they got Rhythm. Did Rhythm do an exhibition over at Blackpool yet, or was it just Smooth?
I don't know. I feel like they did. If not last year, the year before.
I know they were dancing it. I know they danced it at the comp now. I think
that's right. They had an amateur.
They're doing like
pro. They had a pro too. Yeah.
They have a pro. But I think Smooth kicked that off. I think Smooth is when they kicked that off, because
Yeah, Smooth got there
they
first.
Had a strong identity. I mean, it was
it was more legitimate for sure.
And then it was marketable and teachable, because now they're all teaching it. So
it was more agreed upon for sure. The people who talk about Smooth definitely talk about it in much more of and I don't know if it is actually more agreed upon, or if it's just the people who are in Smooth are more comfortable with one another than the ones who are in Rhythm.
I think to me, once again, it's that it's agreed upon, but there's the variances of the techniques. There's the variances of like, well, this is how I describe how to move and use the body, and this is how I describe how to move the body, but we end up at the same place. That's the difference.
But don't you think that's in all of them, other than the ending up at the same place part? Like, don't you think the discrepancies in the movement,
I think my thing with
and
Rhythm,
the similarities,
but the thing with
there?
And my point about Rhythm is the arguments I hear it's about getting to the same place. It's not the same place. Even the how we get there is off. And it's like, what's going on? The only thing
see, I don't have that feeling. I feel like for the most part, it kind of felt to me like the way you said it. They all want the same thing ultimately, but one calls it apple, one calls it orange. I mean, but they have no clue what an apple or an orange is. Either of them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's been my experience.
Either way, it's when something's agreed upon, the sport flourishes. Smooth is at an all-time high because they agreed. Latin and internationals dancing in 75% of the world. So basically, they agreed on certain things, and things flourish. So,
shocker.
world come together. We got a vaccine in less than a year.
Yeah.
It works. It works. All right, I'm done. I think
yeah,
we got.
no, that was a pleasure. Thanks for going on the ride as always. I hope everybody at home enjoyed our little impromptu.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about it. We'll split this up into a few, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, you know, this was just good conversation. There's a lot of spaces where we went off kilter, but all podcasts go off kilter. They just have an editing team that like edits all of the that edits
I
all.
was gonna say I'm gonna look at it. I might edit it. I might not.
No,
If
let's
it's
keep
easy.
it raw. Keep it raw.
All right. No worries. I was.
That was a good
I
argument.
always watch through every episode. The only times I've ever edited something was when it was like, okay, y'all made this point already.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Move it along, people. Move it along, like, because I know I do that all the time.
Jonathan, I have advertised this as passionate debate where we're going to agree and fight. I've told people that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're cutting out what I marketed.
No, I leave those. If we fight good enough, it doesn't matter how repetitious we are. I'll leave it in.
Yeah, leave it all that good stuff. All right, everybody.
Well, I'll let you go, everybody home. We'll see you next time.
Let's talk about it.